For the next step, we will be preparing the lining pieces. So we're going to start with the slip pocket. So you get your slip pocket lining piece and you fold into 2 equal parts. You just fold it as neatly as you possibly can, and then you go ahead to sew the edges. We're not sewing the bottom yet. We just go ahead to sew the edges, and you can use half an inch allowance, seam allowance for this. Don't forget to backstitch, and then you go ahead to sew the other side of your slip pocket. And then after sewing it, you turn it over, which we'll be doing soon. So I'm just making a little notch, just cutting out some parts at the bottom because I do not want it to be too bulky by the time I turn it over. So that is why I just cut very little out of it, and I make sure not to cut your stitching. Okay, when you are doing that, you just need to cut off a little, and then after turning it out, making it straight, you can go ahead to iron it. I personally went ahead to iron this one. Then you now do a basting stitch. A basting stitch is basically just a stitch that you use to hold something temporarily. Like you just do it at the very edge, just small. You do not want it to be too big. It doesn't necessarily have any allowance. It's just to hold something in place. So after going in with the basting stitch, you can cut off all of your rough threads, rough edges, just so that it's smooth and you can actually see what is left for you to work with. Now, the strap for the slip pockets, this is it. So obviously, at the point of measuring, they were both the same size. The slip pocket lining piece was the same size as well as the strap, but because of the allowance that we used to mark it out, that we used to sew it, it has reduced, which is fine. It is completely fine. Now I just marked half an inch, okay, on one end of it, and then I am going to place the slip pocket piece on that one half an inch mark, okay, that we just marked. So I'm just applying gum. I'm applying gum only on this faux leather piece because you cannot be trusted, honestly, to apply a certain amount of gum, on your lining material, because you don't want it to get stained. So you just fold it, mark the middle of your lining piece, and then you also mark the middle of your strap, and then you place it gently on that half an inch mark that you made. Use your hand to smoothen it, make it. We are obviously going to sew it, so it's fine. You just need to apply gum on one piece, which is the strap. And the reason we are doing this is because there's going to be an excess by the time we are done sewing it. So we want the excess to be on one side, and one side should actually be very straight. So after placing it, now we are going to apply gum on the rest of the strap, and then we'll just carefully bend it over. So just take your time to do that. We're just going to bend it over very, very gently. And then the part that is shorter, which is that half an inch that we made, is where you are going to be sewing on. So make sure that your excess is at the back. You are going to be sewing on the shorter part of it. After sewing, cut off your threads, your excess threads and all of that. And this is basically what you have left. So you have a uniform part at one side and you have this excess at the other side. So you see why we only applied gum on the faux leather strap, because it's easy for you to put and you don't have any gum stains on your lining material. So you just go ahead to gently, carefully cut out the excess from the other end of your piece, and then you also cut off the excesses on the sides, trying as much as you can not to cut off your main piece. So you go ahead to get one side or one of your main lining piece, and then we're going to be placing this on it. So again, we'll find the middle of our slip pockets. You just find the middle, and then from that middle you mark half an inch on one side, half an inch on the other side. However, later on I ended up marking half an inch twice on one side, half an inch twice on the other side. You'll see more later. And then you go ahead to mark the middle on top, and we're going to be connecting the middle lines together because we'll be sewing through the middle eventually. So we want it to be straight. And then you go ahead to mark 2.5 inches from the top of your lining piece. This is basically where we are going to be placing our slip pocket. 2.5 inches is not so far into the bag, and it is not so it's not so deep into the bag, and it is not so high up in the bag. So 2.5 inches is perfect. So you find the middle, you mark your 2.5 inches mark, and then now to place it. So like I was explaining, I went ahead from that middle piece to mark half an inch twice on one side, just like that, and then on the other side mark half an inch twice. And then I also repeated this process on the top of the slip pockets. We're doing this because this is a type or a design of slip pockets that we want to do. You can decide not to use this for your own, which is completely fine. So next, we're going to bring this edge, the last one, we're going to bring it to the middle to make it touch, just like that. So from the parts that you measured the half an inch last, you're going to bring it to the middle there. You can hold it in place or pin it, whatever thing you want to do, and then you do so on the other side. Make it touch the middle. And then you repeat the same thing upwards. For the top, it might be a little bit bulky because of the faux leather there, but you just have to try to put it in place and make it as straight as you possibly can. So now we have the actual size that we want to be working with. Make sure that it is straight. I'm just going to zoom in here. So we're going to go to that 2.5 inches mark that you are seeing there. Carefully hold your piece together to make it straight, and then we're going to be marking the sides. This very mark that we are putting is just so we can tell where we are going to be placing our lining piece by the time we'll be sewing. So zooming out for a second again, I've already marked the top, and now I'm marking the bottom just very gently. Okay, just so that by the time we're sewing, we know exactly where we are going to be stitching. So you open it. Now we are going to be sewing the middle first, and then later on we'll be sewing the sides. So at this middle, you need to be careful, and then you also need to back stitch here, so that you don't have some loose stitch later on when you are using the bag. And then you just go down the straight line. For next, we're going to be sewing the sides. And in doing this, we're basically just going to bring the sides to the mark that we made at the top and the bottom, and then we are going to be sewing it. Remember to backstitch at this very top here. And then you go again. When you get to the end, you just have to turn over, and then you make sure that you fold that part just the way we folded when we were holding it with the pegs. So you just make sure that you hold that part intact, and then you take the other side and put it on that same mark on the other side, just like you did the first one. Folding it again. And then you continue. Turn to the other side and continue with your stitch. So this is what we have now. You have that middle sewn, the side sewn. You also kind of have like some extra space there. But this is basically the design that we'll be doing for this particular bag. There are other kinds of designs you can do for your slip pockets. So next we're going to go to our inner pockets, inner zip pockets. Okay, this one is going to be a little bit tricky because we are going to be turning the whole bag out of this pocket. Okay, but it is easy to get. So you just find the middle of one of your lining pieces, find the middle of your zip, and then we're going to be sewing this using a basting stitch. We're going to be sewing this right sides on top. So basically your zip is going to be facing like the right side, which is going to be facing the correct side, facing up, and then you are going to be sewing it on your lining piece, which is also facing up. Okay, so you're just going to be holding this with a very thin stitch just to hold it in place. Okay, what I mean by your zip facing up, that's where you have your zip head upwards. Okay, so just use a very simple stitch to hold it in place. So we're going to be removing the pins and basically repeating it on the other piece of lining. the other piece of lining for the zip pocket. Okay, so you basically just find the middle of that one again, and when you are placing this, the right side is going to be facing the right side of the lining will be facing each other. So just the way this one is up, you're going to put this one on top. Okay, so the right sides are basically facing each other for the lining piece. Just going to pin this in place and then go ahead to stitch. Removing the pins. By the time you are done with your simple stitch, you're going to see that the right side of your zip is going to be facing, like, it's going to be in between the wrong side of your lining, which is fine, which is completely, this is what we want. And then the back is going to be at the right side. This is what we want, okay, because we're going to be folding this. Next, for this top, I'm just going to iron it so that it is straight and I can actually see what I'm working with. So I just went ahead to iron that part carefully, iron the zip carefully. So you can see this is exactly what you want, okay? Then you get the other piece of your lining and you also get your zip overlay strap. You find the middle, just like we did for the first one. You find the middle and then, mark your notch or just make your very small mark, okay? And then we are going to do the same for our zip overlay strap. You just bend it over, find the middle, the center of it. And then, of course, we are going to be marking 2.5 inches from the top of your lining piece. Remember that because it's 2.5 inches, we did on the other one is why we are doing 2.5 inches here, because we do not want one to be high up in the bag and the other one to be very down. So I just went ahead to pin it down and I'll be sewing just the outer part of it yet. I will not be sewing the middle, the inner part of the overlay strap. So I'll just be sewing the outer parts of it. Now, if you notice, I never start sewing from the edge. I always start somewhere in the middle. That is because just the way you see, I can easily just climb through when I'm done. So there is no loose stitch. You just carefully do it just the way you can see. You can barely see where it was joined. If you start from the edge of whatever it is you are sewing, you might make a lot of mistakes and then your stitchings might be very different. So, well, anyway, I went ahead after sewing to cut out the middle, just like that, just the middle. Ensure that you're only cutting the lining piece in between and you're not cutting all the way through a stitch. Okay, you can just still leave some space there. It's going to be covered. You will not see it. So we're just cutting the middle there, just so that we can go back to seeing our zip slits. And there you have it. So you have your slit there, and then you're going to get this one, lie it flat, and basically we're just going to be placing it just the way you see it. Okay, we're going to be lining it flat and then placing it. So I'm just going to apply gum on around the zip and then on the lining piece. But here I'm just arranging it first, just so you can see what I mean and what we'll be working on. So after applying gum on the required places, you go ahead to just place them carefully. Again, this is as the measurement of your zip, okay? Oh, another important thing that I should have mentioned is that some people don't care the direction their zips are. Some might be going left, some might be going right in one bag. But I find it more better and neater if all of your zip heads are facing one direction. So you can see that this zip head now is facing to the left, okay? And I'm going to ensure that all of the zips I'm going to be adding to this bag is going to be facing the same direction. So now I'm just going to add, I'm going to sew the inner parts now. The first part we sewn was the outer. Now I'm going to be sewing the inner part. The lining pieces are very straight under. So you need to make sure that the lining pieces under remain as straight as possible. You're just sewing the zip, and I'm just sewing the inner part. Remember, we already sewed the outer part before, so now I'm just sewing the inner part of it. Okay, so this is what I mean when I said the lining pieces under were still very straight. You can see how it was. So this is how I placed it and sewed round it. Okay. So the next step is that we're going to bring this top part of it and we're going to bring it downwards. Okay. So you can go ahead to pin the sides just to make sure that the sides are equal. But basically at this bottom piece here, we're going to just turn it over just a little bit, just where you are seeing me do with my hands. I'm going to go ahead to iron it. So you can iron it, it might be better for you, or you can just use your hand to slip it. Okay, and then after doing the top, you bend over the bottom piece. The bottom piece is going to be bigger. That is fine. That is completely fine. That the bottom piece is bigger than the top one, and that's because of the way we sewed it and bent it over. So I went ahead to iron it, making it straight, and now I'm going to sew the sides so you can see how it is from inside. I will not be sewing the bottom because, like I said, we are going to be turning the whole bag through this pocket piece. So I'm going to be sewing the sides. You want to remove as much as you can. You're going to be using 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you just make sure that when you are doing it, you backstitch very, very well. Okay, you can go ahead to do it twice. You backstitch very well because there's going to be a lot of pressure around this part. So using 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm just going to sew the sides, including the edge of the zip. And then when I'm done with this side, I am going to be repeating the same thing on the other side. So we're not going to be sewing the bottom just yet, okay? But make sure that you do a very good back stitch. And so here we have it. We are done with the inner zipper pockets. You can see the space, that is fine. This is exactly what we want. Now we can move on to the next step.